Welcome to New York Comic Con. We are 2000 AD. Borag Thung Earthlets, and welcome to New York Comic Con. We are here in the Big Meg, hoisting our wares upon the American people. I am joined as ever by the very helpful and very wonderful Katie Rex.
You said a nice thing about me.
Shut up. And Robo Jules.
Hello.
See, that's how you respond to people, Katie.
Okay.
That's,
Good to know.
Yeah. Guys, this is going to be at the beginning of the podcast episode, but we are recording it at the end so that we can be nice and jolly because, you know, we've only got a little time to go. How's it been, Katie?
I've been having a really good show. I think that we've sold a lot of really, really good books that I wish I had read before we sold them. You know, just a couple though. That Hillbilly one.
That Hillbilly one?
I don't know.
That's like a little goblin guy.
Yeah, there's like a goblin on
the Fink Angel.
Yeah.
Yes. That's only just come out, so.
Okay, well, it looked awesome, and I didn't get to read it yet, and it's sold.
Good.
Not for me.
Robo Jules, Julia. How's it been for you?
It has been wonderful. Lots of enthusiastic fans, great people. It's been a great time. Good.
And obviously we've had some of the exclusives, we've had the merchandise. Things are kind of changing, aren't they? You know, we're bringing fewer books, but we're kind of getting more customers because people are getting different things. I mean, what's been the feedback from people that you've talked to?
Yeah, people were very into the merchandise. It sold really well. People loved it. I actually had a lot of people liking the books too and asking about them, so.
I think that as the American fandom grows, people want to be able to show who they love, and that of course means that they want the pins and the cufflinks.
Cufflinks.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really nice to see how enthusiastic everybody has been. With lots of returning customers, but also lots of people coming here because they go, 2000 AD, I've heard of that. Speaking of which, we sold out of Prog 2000 in less than a day.
Yeah, that was the first day.
Yeah, which was nice to see. Means that I don't have to cart them all the way back to the UK. So we've had quite a few people in and out of the booth over the past few days. This episode of the podcast is going to be a real smorgasbord of guests. I've been around the car and I've invited people in, so we're going to be talking to Alex de Campi, Arthur Wyatt, David Brothers from Image, Douglas Wolk, who's the writer of the Mega City 2 series, just getting a sense not just of what's happening at the show, but their feelings towards 2000 AD. And the impact that 2000 AD has and continues to have on American comic books. So, Katie, wish everybody happy listening.
I'm proud to be American.
Julia?
Happy listening.
There you go. That's how you do it. You just can't get the droids these days. So, another New York Comic Con, another convention centre somewhere in America, and a few months after we last talked, Gregory from 3A, welcome back to the Thrillcast.
Yeah, hi, thank you.
So let's talk figures, because on the booth we have the 1/6 Dredd. Which is up for pre-order at the moment, but we also have the prototype of a very popular character from 2000 AD. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you've bought this weekend?
Yeah, we've decided to debut the one and only Johnny Alpha. It's been a long time in production, maybe about a year or so, but he's looking good.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about the look that you've chosen, because I mean we were talking yesterday about all the changes that Carlos has done to Johnny over the years. Where do you draw the line? Where do you decide, well, this is going to be the look we'll go for?
I think we ultimately just chose the splash page from the Dredd and Johnny Alpha crossover from the first one, that iconic scene where, like, let's stick with that outfit. that works because if going back through all the progs, every panel, the details were different, just because no one was really paying attention, or it was just kind of you had to get the work done. So I'm sure it was just sort of general idea of these details, and yeah, I think we succeeded in getting kind of a good amalgamation of looks for Johnny into one figure.
Let's talk helmets, because this figure has a removable helmet, but also hair that could then be added to the head. Was there ever a time you were like, well, he obviously needs to have hair, let's see if we can get the hair in the helmet?
We tossed around the idea of just doing two heads, hair sculpt, helmet sculpt, but I like removable helmets, and the engineer, Curtis, who's the real hero on this whole toy line, he makes everything happen, he had the brilliant idea of just being like, let's make it a wig. And then you just swap the wig with the helmet, because, if we done a real helmet that fit over the hair, or if we did rooted hair, it just might look like ass. So, and we wanted that tight, like really close cropped helmet to get the silhouette right, not just this giant fishbowl on his head.
Well, I mean, the helmet, although it's a unique helmet for any character, but it changes shape and size over the years. Talk a little bit about some of the challenges of deciding what to do with it.
Oh, I mean, the shape of the kind of duckbill pointed end, like how far out does it stick? I ended up going through on like comics arts forums and read just looking at Esquera's con sketches, because that's as simplified as you can get a drawing, because he's just got to bang it out. So we looked at those to really just be like, this is the essence of the shape, and then we pull from that, and then we would look at the fan film, Steve Green's work, and be like, okay, this is how it should be weathered. This is kind of like, seeing it in 3D in real life helps so much. So like just looking at what Planet Replicas does, what Steve Green and all of them do in the fan films, and just be like, okay, that's a point of reference we can go to and look at and say we can build that and it looks good.
Now, like I said, we've got the Dredd stood next to Johnny, who is the next size up. He's towering over Johnny Alpha. What are the challenges of doing such a small kind of action toy sized? I mean, there's huge amounts of articulation.
Yeah.
You've got to balance it, but you've also got to add all this detail. What are the challenges for your designers and the production?
It really the paint work is kind of crucial. Just knowing how to layer in the paint and the washes, so you get the details to pop, and also the very tiny stitching is crucial, because you want it to be clean, you want it to look good, and you want the figure to be able to move. But with fabric clothing on a figure, you're going to have some limitations in articulation. But we try and find fabrics that allow you to pose and to move, and I think we've got some really nice high quality stuff that's going to get maximum range. But it's also just details, like fortunately with 3D modeling now, you can really get small, tiny details in there, especially with the weapons. Like looking at the turns, like the detailed weapon turns that Esquera did, and just bringing those to life. They're so intricate. Like you can just like a size of a pinhead, just little tiny details that are really incredible.
I mean, developing something like this takes time. 3A has lots of other lines of figures. Is there something more special about the 2000 AD line? Because I mean, you guys are fans of the same stuff that we are.
Yeah.
Do you feel a certain connection to this kind of stuff? A certain amount of extra pride?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Ash and I talk about it, pretty often as just this is his passion project. It's a passion project for me, and like I've been, there's a gap in time where just things kind of slowed down, but I pushed for it until you said like, fine, you're in charge, just take care of it. And yeah, it's many nights on Skype until like 4 a.m. with Hong Kong, just figuring out how best to make these things and how to like capture, the best art and the best artists and just put them in 3D.
Has Carlos seen anything of what you've done so far?
I have no idea.
All right, okay. I just thought I'd check.
I'd love to find out, but also it would be terrifying.
At San Diego, we had a little chat about the future and about what's coming up. I know some people were very excited by your use of the word nemesis, but we obviously went into the challenges of creating a cloven-hooved action figure with articulation. What have you got in development at the moment?
Right now, well, we've got Dredd. We're seeing how everything goes with Dredd with the 1/6, and then following him, we want to do Anderson. And so right now the challenge is kind of mixing, like, we're really blending Bolland and Ranson, and trying to capture a good, like, really beautiful face is kind of the key thing. And then also the body, developing the body so that, she stands a little shorter than Dredd, or, at best maybe, a head shorter than he is, just so you kind of get that, diversity in the figure and capture that art. And then we've got the 1/12 should be shipping fairly soon. I know it's been forever. Yeah, I'm sorry, but delays happen. Nobody likes them. We don't like them. It's frustrating, but I promise.
Well, let's talk about that, because there are people who express frustration because it's based on pre-orders. That's the business model. You see people say, well, I've paid for it. Why is it taking so long? Like you say, you don't like delays, no. But is it a case of you're just trying to get it right, or production takes time?
It's a mix of that. It's mostly you want to check quality control. You want to make sure that what you're shipping is a solid product, and you don't want to disappoint your fans, and you don't want to disappoint the people that spent so much money, because they're not cheap. They're not cheap toys, and we know that, and we understand that, and we just want to make the best figures we can. So we'd rather delay things, reassess if something's not working, then put something out that's shit.
So I've descended into the human sardine tin that is Artist Alley at New York Comic Con, and who should I bump into but Mr. Chris Burnham. Hello, Chris.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm very well. You're sounding very chipper for halfway through the show so far. Are you having a good one?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. The table's been really busy. We've been trying to start this interview for the last 15 minutes, and people won't leave us alone, so good problem to have.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I wanted to come and chat because, of course, we just had Prog 2000, and one of the variant covers was by your good self. Take us through how that came about.
I got an email out of the blue from Tharg himself, asking if I wanted to do a variant cover, and I figured that like American publishers, there was 25 or maybe even 2,000 variant covers. So I said, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And it was only, I think, after I finished the drawing that I found out it was only 3 covers to the thing. It blew my mind that they trusted a filthy American to do one of the covers for. I mean, this is one of the milestones in comic book history, as far as I'm concerned. It's crazy. A 40-year-old weekly comic, it's amazing. 2,000 issues, it's crazy.
And you drew upon a very specific cover for that. Why? I mean, for those who don't know, it's the crime, the bullet-ridden crime Mick McMahon cover. Why did you decide to draw on that one?
That was Tharg's idea, actually. Yeah, he asked me to do a riff on either that one or. There's another one where it's a classic Dredd on the Lawmaster charging at the at the camera, and then he wanted, and what if in the background there were a million, 2000 AD covers. It's like, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. Because if I pasted them in Photoshop, it would look like shit or garbage. Can I say shite on the podcast?
You can say whatever you want.
All right, good. And then if I had to hand draw them all, it would take me my whole life. So I went with the Mick McMahon one, which was a real challenge because Mick McMahon's sense of anatomy, he just draws whatever he wants with just wild abandon, and he can get away with anything because his style is so aggressive. And so when I tried to replicate it, it looked really weird. Like I note if you look at that cover, Dredd's hips are like 3 feet wide. So I was taking a photo reference to try and figure out what it would really look like, and it's preposterous. Like it really can't be done. So I had to cheat it a little bit, and I really had to arc out the 2000 to get Dredd's foot low enough that his knee wasn't coming up at like a perfect 90-degree angle. So it took quite a bit of finagling to get it to look right, but I really am very happy with how it turned out.
Of course, the other two covers were by Glenn Fabry and Cliff Robinson, both veteran droids.
Is it true that was Cliff's 100th cover? Is that right?
I think so. Pete Wells was telling me that the other day, which is a remarkable achievement for even for 2000 AD.
Yeah, it's crazy, and that guy's the greatest. I mean, I say he's better than Brian Ball, screw that guy.
You know I'm recording this, don't you?
Yeah. You heard me, Brian.
And let's talk a bit about your connection to Dredd, because I mean you've done a free comic book day Dredd for us, and also this. And how did you actually come to be a 2000 AD and Dredd fan in the first place?
I don't know. I mean, I've been slowly dipping my toe in, I guess, since I was a teenager. I first picked it up probably because I liked Simon Beasley a lot. In America, we had a book called Dredd Rules that collected like the fairly recent, like this is circa 1992 or something like that. So it was collecting recent stories from 2000 AD, and I guess from the magazine as well. And a Beasley story was always the lead story, and so I got a sense of like what Mega City 1 was about, but I wasn't really following it religiously. And it wasn't until, probably 6 years ago that I started really seeking out all the Fleetway and quality reprints, which were of
the oxymoronic title.
Yeah, they really. They're printed on toilet paper, and since the British comics have a different aspect ratio than Americans, a lot of the time they just squash them to get them onto American paper. So everyone looks really skinny and weird, and when they look up at the sky, the moon is the shape of it's an ellipse rather than a circle. It's like, what the hell is going on here? But the content is just so awesome. So I like Sam Slade and Strontium Dog and like ABC Warriors, all that stuff. Like they put out almost a complete collection of like the 1980s, 2000 AD. You can get as shitty reprints here in the States if you're willing to really seek it out and track stories, across all the titles. Because a lot of them turned into anthology series themselves. So if you pick up Sam Slade, like you get like 2 Sam Slade stories in each issue, and then you also get some ABC Warriors, maybe some Nemesis, and like maybe even like Ace Trucking Company or something. Like they really were throwing everything at the wall. And so like I've got a fairly deep knowledge of early 2000 AD for an American.
One of the things that I always notice is that early stuff, the classic stuff, is often cited by people who say, I remember it was amazing. But but you're also a fan of the current stuff as well, aren't you? Oh yeah, I love it. I've subscribed for the last couple of years. I've spent all sorts of money getting a fair amount of the graphic novels as well. I also subscribe to the magazine now. Like I'm fully in the tank. Our work here is done. It's great, and it's kind of a drag for Americans to get the physical issues, but subscribing via the app is great. Like, it shows up first thing in the morning on Wednesdays. Sometimes it seems to show up late Tuesday night, but I can't quite understand why it doesn't seem to come in at the same time every week. But it's great. And looking to the future, more from you for 2000 AD?
I sure hope so. I love it. Although, I mean, it depends how this damn Brexit thing works out, because my page rate seems to be decreasing by the hour.
I think there's a lot of British creators who are getting marginally happier over this stuff, but American creators, no. Definitely.
Yeah, really.
So I've made my way across Artist Alley through the throng to sit down with Alex de Campi. Welcome to the Thrillcast, Alex.
Hello.
So we were literally just saying about how 2000 AD has a very important place in your career. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I wouldn't be in comics but for 2000 AD. After I gave up American comics, having discovered boys and rock and roll and intoxicating substances, I was living in the UK, and a friend of mine who was in the British Army was moving out of his barracks, and he looked at me and said, "You look like someone who would enjoy comics." And I'm like side-eyeing the big stack of Commandos that's sitting in my bathroom, like, because all right-thinking people have a stack of Commando comics in their bathroom. And like, what would give you that idea? And he goes, "Don't know, but I have all these comics. I don't want to move.
Right.
You know, when I move to like Germany or wherever I'm being posted next, have them." And it was about 200 issues of 2000 AD, plus a light sprinkling of the better Vertigo books, mostly written by ex-2000 AD writers and drawn by ex-2000 AD artists.
Yeah.
Funny that. And I fell in love again, and I subscribed both to the magazine and the normal Prog. And just ate it all up. You know, I like Andy Diggle's old Snow Tiger. I mean, I can, you know, Colin Wilson's work. I could go on and on, but it's, you know, it's a truly unique set of magazines, and long may it rain.
And what is it that grabs you so about it?
I think the variety, because there's always going to be something you like in any program. You know, you might like it all. You may like, there might be one story where you're like, that's not really for me, but like, you know, the serial nature of it, the really excellent short form storytelling, and just the science fiction element. I mean, I'm a real sucker for good character driven sci-fi, and that's what 2000 AD does almost better than any other comic periodical in the world.
And how has that come through in your own work? Can you see the influence of 2000 AD on your own writing?
Oh, definitely. I mean, my first graphic novel, Smoke, was very much you know, here is someone who is living in London and read a shit ton of 2000 AD. Beyond that, I went through a whole sort of realism period, which I'm now coming out of and remembering that I can have talking animals and like flying saucers in comics. But even more than the dystopian sci-fi, the character work has always been so strong in 2000 AD, and that's what really inspired me, that you could do really great dramatic writing in comics that was about more than the whiz-bang, because a lot of American sci-fi comics tend to be about the whiz-bang, whereas 2000 AD is very much more story-centric. You know, even the old standbys, like, you know, why is Judge Dredd remain so evergreen? There's always a really good story in there about a character who often isn't Dredd.
And I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I see I see a revival in the last few years of sci-fi comics, which is something that American comics had, to a certain extent, fallen out of love with. You had the sort of great periods back in the day, but in the last sort of 5 years, most of Image's output you could describe as being sci-fi comics. Do you think that's kind of resurgence in the influence of something like 2000 AD, or was it always waiting to happen?
I think it's a lot of factors. I mean, a lot of those sci-fi comics are written by people, and written and drawn by people who are veterans of 2000 AD. But for a long time, the American comics market, you know, there was very controlled by DC and Marvel, like the monthly periodical comic market. And with the rise of Image, people could finally, and you know, there was no real place. Like, you couldn't pitch DC or Marvel a sci-fi book.
Yeah.
You know, there was no place for it. We only do superheroes here, and so I think there was this enduring love of sci-fi, inspired by things like 2000 AD, that when American creators and other English-speaking creators had more freedom to write exactly what they wanted and publish exactly what they wanted, sci-fi came back. It had never really gone anywhere. It had just been chased to the sides by the DC Marvel, the weird American comics model that's like nowhere else in the world.
Yeah. I remember picking up sort of back issues of epic titles that felt so European for Marvel Comics, but had kind of high concept stuff that I was used to, reading heavy metal in 2000 AD. Yeah. In terms of the essence of 2000, what has gone on to inspire so much imitation and influence. What do you think that is? What do you think is the essence of 2000 AD that means it's had this big impact?
I think it's hard to boil down to any one thing. It's just the sort of the spread of creativity. I mean, even if you just go by the classic 2000 AD characters, you have everything. It's Slane, right? I'm not going to mispronounce it.
That's open to debate. Okay.
The Irish character. It's a bit like the Scottish play. It's the Irish character. You have like great classic, Irish mythic fantasy. You have Rogue Trooper, like the robot future war. You have like dystopian future with Dredd, dystopian right-wing future. Which we're heading towards. No, Brexit. Fuck you, Theresa May. Sorry, just something in the air. ABC Warriors, like there's so Durham Red. I love Durham Red. Vampires in space. They're like this unparalleled celebration of creativity and what sci-fi can be, and I think that's one of the foundations of both the inspiration of 2000 AD and its success, in that it's not trying to be any one thing to any one person. It just tells good stories, and those good stories can range across the full gamut of science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah. I mean, to be quite frank, it's lovely to hear an American talking with such passion about 2000 AD, because so often, we have our fans over here, and there's been a lot of influence, but some people are put off because they look at, somebody said today, this looks very British.
And Brandon Graham was a great friend of mine. He was one of the great American sci-fi comic creators, original voices, was like posting pictures from Art Ransom's old Button Man, going, this stuff's amazing! And I'm like, yeah, it really was. I have the trade. But also some of the American views of 2000 AD are somewhat skewed, because what gets brought over here tends to mostly be the Dredd stuff. Yeah. And a lot of people don't realize, the full gamut of what exists under the 2000 AD banner. So hopefully we'll see more and more of reprints and original stuff coming over here.
Absolutely, we're trying our hardest. So you're going to be working with Arthur Wyatt on a forthcoming movie Dredd series. What was your? How does that come about? Was that something that you approached us or Arthur, or was that something that he did?
I've been wanting to work on 2000 AD for a while, as I think so many fans of the magazine kind of would see themselves someday as going into comics and maybe getting the privilege of writing for this wonderful institution, being touched by Tharg, as it were. That sounds kind of wrong.
Very wrong.
Touch me, Tharg. And I'm Art Wyatt and I are old friends, and he said, I'm doing this Dredd movieverse thing, and I'm super busy, and you're kind of crazy, and would you like to work on it with me? And I said, heck yes. And so we threw all sorts of ideas around, from doing a movieverse reintroduction of the Dark Judges, which yes, we have so many good ideas for this, to just a simple heist book. And the book we're probably going to tackle first is a heist gone very wrong with some of the Dredd movieverse characters. That's all I can probably say about it right now.
It's going to be a collaboration. Have you worked with another writer on a title before?
I do a lot of collaborations, actually. I really enjoy them. I've gotten to the point in my career where I've published enough comics where I don't feel grabby about, like, it has to be my vision. I mean, it's very hard to be that as a comics writer anyway, because then you pass your script off to a line artist, and they interpret the book their own way. So, like, you're used to, I mean, the No Mercy, which is my Image series with Carla Speed McNeil, is very, very collaborative. I'm doing a collaboration with the science fiction writer Saladin Ahmed. I'm doing a collaboration with a well-known actor who I can't talk about right now because the way to keep your friend's secret project secret is don't talk about it. And I really enjoy it. It's if you know, once you can get past your own ego, which is a big thing, it's a lot of fun to throw ideas back and forth. And this is very much like, you know, Art's had a lot more experience working with 2000 AD than I have, so it's very easy to, like, just let go and let him not take the lead, but, you know, provide most of the direction and occasionally rein me back in when I get a little bit too out there with, like, no, Dredd wouldn't do that, you know.
And I mean, ultimately, this is based on the 2012 movie. What was your reaction when you first saw it?
I loved it. Like, the special effects were amazing. All the characters were amazing. I mean, I think we're all into Mama, like, so much. You know, it was so well done. It was finally like, yes. I mean, we all have a dirty love for, like, Sly Stallone Dredd, like, late at night, you know.
Speak for yourself.
But it was kind of like, finally they got Dredd right.
I mean, Arthur's talked to me about there are an unusual set of unique challenges to writing movie Dredd because it is Dredd, but it's nonetheless happening within a different context. There's a different set of rules. Is this something that you're looking forward to tackling with him?
Yeah, I mean, every time you take on writing somebody else's characters, which either Dredd is, there's always a set of rules. But within that, you know, it's a very, I feel weird saying this about Dredd, but it's a very benevolent little empire.
That is a weird thing to say.
I am the law. Do what you will. It is the whole of the law. Points if you got that one, kids. Don't tell your mom. And you know, we have a great deal of freedom within that. You know, every so often they'll come back and say something like, well, you know, we're working on this bit of continuity and it's actually that, or like, we'd prefer you not use that character because something else, another writer's doing something else with that right now. But it's much more freeing and laid back than, say, working on a US superhero character.
And I mean, are you hoping that this is going to develop into you know, further relationship with 2008, or are we maybe see an original character from Alistair Campi in our pages?
Oh, I'd love to. I mean, of course, it's all up to Tharg. So, you know, we exist at the whims of Tharg.
All hail Tharg. So we're at the 2000 AD booth in New York Comic Con, and I'm joined by Erica Henderson. Welcome to the Thrillcast, Erica.
Hi, it's great to be here.
I'm sure that there will be some of our listeners who know your work, but for the uninitiated, what are the titles that you work on?
I work on the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl with Marvel Comics, and up until recently, I was part of the Archie reboot of Jughead.
Fantastic. I mean, those two could not be more different than 2000 AD. So tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to be working, because those were two very popular and quite high-profile titles. How did you come to be working on them?
Oh, it was fun. I think I did a lot of work on the side while I was working my day job for a long time. I worked in video games for a while, and I was just doing lots of little things, and then eventually video games have a lot of layoffs all the time, just part of the business. And at one point I figured maybe I just won't take any job offers this next time and see how it goes. And I was just doing more and more work, and I think that's just how it goes these days. People do work, it's online, you get noticed because your work is out there, enough people see it, then someone gets interested. Because it was Marvel that approached me, I didn't pitch to them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's sort of it. Same with Archie. With Archie, I'd already been doing Squirrel Girl for a bit, so my profile was much higher at that point. So it was less strange that this company had approached me.
And how have you coped with the transition from video? Because we're owned by a computer games firm, Rebellion. So we sit in a big office with all those guys. What was the transition like from computer games to comics?
It was funny because a lot of what I was doing when I was freelancing initially, right out when I was trying to see if it would work, was more indie games because I live in the Boston area. We have MIT right there, and everyone leaving school has their startup. It's just a city full of startups making games and whatever else, little machines they can put together. So I was actually still doing both at the same time for a while. I guess, really the main difference is that you're working alone as opposed to in a large room with many other people, which I tend to remedy by just literally going outside and working near other people, even if I don't work with them or even look at them.
I have talked to writers who've got to the point sometimes where they just have to go and sit in a cafe or a library or something like that, because otherwise they might go stark staring mad.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time in a local cafe. It's fairly large, and during the day there aren't any people there, so I don't feel like I'm taking anyone's business away. I go all the way in the back, and there's just enough going on that it feels like I've done something, and I've gone outside.
Now, this is obviously the 2000 AD podcast. Let's talk about 2000 AD, because up until a few hours ago, I didn't actually know that you were a fan. How did you come to encounter the galaxy's greatest?
I think the very first thing I read was the crossover with Batman. Yeah, and it was, I think I don't know how old I was. I really can't remember, but young.
It was early 90s.
Yeah, I probably found it a little bit later because I think I saw it in a collection. I think as a tween, I think that's what it's called now, that age group. It was so crazy, like the painting style. I hadn't seen as many European comics. Like we saw a little bit of it, but because a lot of the Dark Horse, Alien, and Predator stuff pulled in these European artists, and it was very exciting, and I didn't know what it was. Like, I knew who Batman was, but who was this other guy who seemed to be fairly important? And who were these crazy, and like the other judges were all in that story too, so, but I don't know where it went, but it was one of those books I kept looking at because it looked so different. And
finding this new thing, this stuff that was so different. What was the effect?
It's funny. I actually grew up around a lot of comics. My dad had a lot, he didn't just have superhero comics, so it wasn't actually that strange for me seeing it, but it looked very different. So we had a lot of like 80s black and white stuff in the house. Like we had a lot of Milk and Cheese and Nexus and all sorts of stuff. So it wasn't weird seeing a different type of comic, but this was a new type of comic that I had not seen yet. It was yet another thing that I hadn't seen yet, and I thought it was very cool.
And in terms of beyond that, have you sort of picked up other 2000 AD stuff over the years?
Oh yeah, actually my friend Ulysses Farinas does the IDW book, and I thought that was like an interesting take because we haven't seen him really outside of his jurisdiction, which is very cool. I've picked up a bunch over the decades. I think what I always find interesting is that the main character, who's our protagonist, upholds a fascist system that's bad. Like I enjoy that. It's interesting watching like where people take that, or even if it's even addressed at all, because then you also bring in like the crazy horror element. I'm actually a big horror fan as well. A lot of when I'm working, I put on terrible movies on Netflix.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about Dredd, is that he whether you think he's a hero or a villain very much depends on your perspective.
Yeah, and I think it depends on even the individual story, because you can still do right within a bad system. So he's an interesting character in that way.
How has the 2000 that you've read influenced your work?
I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things that I like what I see, but it hasn't made its way. There's just a lot of art that I really like, but I haven't found a way to bring it into what I do. And I think this is one of those. Like, even though there's like so many things across what you guys do, it's all so different from what I do, which I think is another thing I admire about it. Like, I like looking at things that aren't what I do. Have you ever been tempted to try Judge Dredd as a piece of work? Yeah, that would be cool.
Fair enough.
I'd try anything.
Cool. Well, I mean, thank you for taking the time to chat, and it's lovely to meet you, and it's nice to know that we have plenty of fans over here amongst artists that, like I said, work on books that seem very different to ours.
Right. Yeah. No. I think the best thing is to have variety. I like things across the spectrum, and any too much of one thing I find to be boring. So I like having a little bit of everything to look at.
Well, yeah. Safe to say that 2000 AD is a little bit of everything.
That's true.
So we've heard from some of our American cousins about 2000 AD, and it's time to speak to another damn Brit. I'm joined by Frazer Irving. Welcome to the Thrillcast, Frazer.
Thank you very much, Michael.
So you weren't going to come over this year to this show. What changed your mind?
You told me you had some passes and I could use one. Basically, I wanted to come because, it's nice to kind of visit the show every once in a while. Actually, I'd like to come every year, but I didn't. I missed it for a year. And I was a bit depressed about that. I thought, man, another year without New York or San Diego. So all I needed was basically a pass to get into the show, and then I got a hotel, a flight, and my visa all on the same day because I was so eager and ready to go, and it was such a good move coming here. Thank you, Dog. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, you're very welcome. We've got a couple of your books at the stall which have been proving popular. One is Tharg's Creepy Chronicles, which has Storming Heaven in it, and the other is the Life and Death of Judge Death. Well, Judge Death, the Life and Death of, which has your Death the Wilderness Years and My Name is Death in. It's been a while since you worked for us. What's it like, sort of looking at these collections? Because particularly the Judge Death stories, that was the last time you worked non-digitally, wasn't it?
Yep, it was indeed. In fact, when I was working on Death in the Wilderness, I believe I was also living in Croatia at the time. So that was an entire period of my life that is now completely over. And in many respects, looking at those pages, I'm reminded of those periods. I'm reminded of the times licking my brush when it had ink on it, of dipping my brush inside my tea. I'm reminded of the time my girlfriend drew a little heart on the top corner of a Judge Death page, and I had to edit it out in Photoshop. I remember the shopping list I wrote down the side of the pages and also edited it out. These things don't happen with digital artwork anymore. It's a completely different experience and environment. But looking at the artwork, I'm quietly chuffed that I actually like it, because I'm extremely critical of my own work, especially back in those days. I was my own worst critic. But now I look at it and I think I can see the energy that went into it, and I think in many respects that kind of masochistic self-criticism was what gave it that energy. I can't say that I'm pleased with all of it, but I'm pleased with enough of it so that I can actually stand at the table and sell it to Americans with every confidence, especially if they've never heard it before. I have no problem like standing by that work. It's great.
And with the Judge Death stuff, the style on that, because when you came to 2000 AD, your style was black and white. It was inks. It was gothic. It was lots of lines all over the place. You know, things like Necronauts that you worked on. Your style now is so very, very different because once you made the leap to full digital, you kind of went off on a voyage of self-discovery. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that process?
Okay, I got the black and white stuff going initially because Andy wanted me to draw the Necronauts because they had the black and white slot in the mega.
Well, that's Andy Diggle.
Yeah, and when Andy Diggle was an editor as opposed to a writer, he had this great idea of introducing a black and white segment into the prog. We all thought it's because he wanted to save money on the colouring, but it was an artistic choice. And I was one of the few people that seemed to be suitable for it because I could actually ink in black and white and I didn't actually need to use colour at that point. If I had given a choice, I would have worked in colour because I did eventually do Storming Heaven and A Love Like Blood with colour. But because Andy got me to do the black and white job, I kind of just landed in that position. I think in many respects I also worked against it. It got me so sick of doing it. I didn't want to be the black and white guy because it really does limit you. But once I got into using the computer, initially I kind of I straddled the fence, as it were. I did line work and then coloured it, but that wasn't committing to it fully. When I finally decided I'm going to paint, I can paint in Photoshop, and I did this in the summer. I experimented with oil paint textures, trying to rip off Jock and so forth. And when I realised I could actually do it, and I could possibly take it somewhere really different and really interesting, then the lines just seemed to be like a prison. They were like bars on my prison window. So much so that these days I don't have any outlines in the work I'm doing, but they don't need it. And I think, personally, I think the work as a whole, the body of work, benefits from that, because otherwise, someone could read like the first 3 books of mine and then get bored of the line style. This way, they know that each new volume of whatever it is going to be something slightly different, but all contaminated with the same brand of unique madness that I bring to it.
Oh, you're one of the generation of the late 90s artists who came in. I mean, you mentioned Jock there, who's another one, who've all gone on to success in America. I mean, that's the cliche, isn't it? About you start at 2000 AD and you go off to America. I've spoken to artists who've done that, and they've said, well, that wasn't what we intended. That's what just happened. Was that always your intention to come into American comics, or was it just because you didn't originally want to be a comic book artist? Have I got that right?
Yeah. I mean, I always wanted to draw comics. I grew up on American comics, but to work for American companies was a fantasy. Getting a job at 2000 AD was the only goal in mind, because basically you've got to be realistic about it, and I did it. And then I remember having a discussion with Andy Diggle again back in the early days when he was still an editor. And we were both sitting in some bar, and he said, wouldn't it be great if one day we could work on our own Dark Horse series or something like that? And the idea of having a Vertigo series was it was the toppermost of the poppermost. We had very humble ambitions back then. I got recruited by America by accident. Some guy saw my Necronauts imagery in the 14 Times, which they printed without permission, of course. And he said to his editor, "Get me this guy." And I got the job drawing Thought Process with the Unexplained. Now that basically opened the door to America for me, because it was a calling card. That's all you really needed. But it was Storming Heaven, and the effect it had on Grant Morrison, and the fact that there were superheroes in it, the fact that everyone responded to psychedelic superheroes in America far more than they did to Judge Dredd or Judge Death. That's what kind of really got me into America. I had 2 starts. One was via Dark Horse, which kind of didn't really go anywhere. And then the second one was via Grant Morrison and DC, which was, again, it was never part of the plan. It was fate, as it were. Looking back, though, it seems quite an obvious path, because that's what I was into as a kid. That's where my influences were. That's where my heart lay. And so, yeah, I guess I'm part of that degeneration who kind of like did that standard kind of father-son trick where like you do exactly what the guys did before us. I don't think any of us had any intention of like working for 2000 AD and then leaving it weeping in the corner whilst we ran off with his bigger sister. I think it's a case where the American industry sees 2000 AD as almost like a little league. Actually, that's one editor did describe it to me as that. I'm stealing someone else's word. He said 2000 AD is like little league. They train them up and then we hire them. That editor doesn't work in comics anymore, I don't think. Oh, he might do, but when I realised they had that attitude, I realised it wasn't a case of us getting lucky. It's simply a case that we do the work, they watch out for us, and then they poach. And I'm just really chuffed that they thought I was worth poaching. You know, it's nice to kind of do the stuff in American comics, especially because it also leads back to 2000 AD. You know, someone says Jock, Andy Diggle, Frazer Irving, and Grant Morrison all worked on 2000 AD. Someone over here is going to go, "Whoa, dude!" And they, as we've seen, they come over to the table, and they want to read what we did. And because it's so different, because the stories are so condensed, I think it works to the advantage of everyone involved. The reader's going to get something weird and special, which they can't get from, like, you know, the big American companies. The artists, we kind of get our egos massaged by people telling us that work we did 15 years ago is great. And 2000 AD should benefit because people will come along past the booth and they'll see familiar names and familiar art styles and they'll think, oh, this isn't something foreign, this is something which is historical, maybe, you know. And I know there's the whole aspect of the new world and the old world. I know there's a love affair between America and England which goes on, or Britain should I say, that goes back at least 200 years. Or maybe it's only to 1812, I'm not entirely sure when they patched it all up. But it's nice to see that we have that kind of relationship kind of embodied in our comics. It's like you have British comics and American comics, and they're made by the same people. And I like that.
Do you ever get a feeling that American comics, cause I've heard this said, it's not something I'm just making up, you know, some artists have said this to me, that they miss a lot of the freedom that they had in 2000 AD because, you know, particularly Matt Smith is an editor who, you know, knows his own mind, knows what he wants, but gives a lot of leeway to creative teams. Have you ever felt that the American comics are a bit more restrictive in 2000 AD? Gives a lot of freedom.
Oh, absolutely. There have been some jobs where you found that either the subject matter or the working practices seemed to be more of a factory process. It was kind of like you have a job to do, you do your job, and then someone else does their job. Whereas my time in 2000 AD, it was anarchic in the respect that when I was working there with Andy, I got the script, I drew it, and I handed it in. And if there was anything wrong with it, like, you know, a panel too small for text, he'd tell me. But often he'd go, "Oh, don't worry, we'll fix it." You know, get the writer to change the words or something. And in that respect, it was great because we knew that there was only a small number of people we had to be accountable to. In American comics, you're accountable to a hell of a lot more people, including the readers. So there's a lot more pressure to kind of not necessarily toe the line, but certainly provide what is required. And having said that, though, in many respects, I think after many years of doing this, I realised that those people aren't necessarily looking, they don't necessarily know what they're looking for. And to do what's required is to kind of go back to the 2000 AD mentality and think, I know they've said make the characters square-jawed and heroic, but what they really need is someone who's like round-shouldered and pot-bellied. And in some respects, the training at 2000 AD, the freedom that we had for those brief years where we mucked around, playing with like toys that only lasted for one series, that actually is what we can then draw upon to make the American work that little bit special. Because I know that over here there's a lot of people who want to work in a certain style, an artistic idiom. You know, they want to draw like Jim Lee, for instance, or like they want to have like that John Buscema kind of flow to storytelling. But at 2000 AD, we were all encouraged to be unique and to be specific, very different from everyone else. I don't know anyone, well, I maybe know two people that got hired there for imitating someone else's style, but those are both very obvious kind of homages to another artist. There was very little in the form of people, artists trying to adopt a 2000 AD style. It just did not exist. Not when I started there anyway. And I think that's one thing that we all bring to the American industry, is that we've got like a very British sensibility. I don't know how true that is now with people getting into comics for the first time, because the industry has changed significantly in the past couple of years in terms of workforce and the kind of things on offer. In some ways, you could even say that the American industry is turning into one gigantic 2000 AD, but I'm not entirely sure how tight that analogy is, but certainly things are changing, and I'm telling myself now and telling everyone listening that it's all the fault of the people from 2000 AD and their corrupting influence.
Good to hear it. Good to hear it. We would like to corrupt. Just one last thing. I'm going to pick up on something you said when you were talking about Storming Heaven, about the effect on Grant Morrison of Storming Heaven. Explain.
All right, this is great. The way I got into comics in America was by crashing a party. I got to San Diego in 2004. And
is that the one you got horrifically sunburnt at?
No, that was 2006. That was when I came here with Simon Spurrier. That's where I met Fiona Staples. I'm not name dropping at all. No, in 2004, this was my first time in America. I thought it was going to be my only time in America. Andy Diggle and Jock had already been signed by DC. Now, they'd been invited to the DC party, and I hadn't. But they told me, oh, just come on the bus and come with us. So I snuck on the bus. I was riding in the bus with Seth Fisher, who's no longer with us, and had a nice chat about kind of how he likes to have a lot of vacation time. And when I got to the party, they put flowers around my neck, and then we went inside. And I was chatting to a bunch of British people as they were discussing how many comics they were working on and what new sports car they'd bought. And there I was feeling very small and insignificant. And then Chris Weston bumps in between everyone, goes, "Frazer, have you met Grant yet?" And I was like, "No." He goes, "Come here, he wants to talk to you." And all of a sudden the crowd froze, as if like I had been summoned. And there, standing by the edge of the party by himself, well, alone except for his wife, was this man in a white suit. And he seemed to be very nice, very pleasant, very chatty. And he told me that Storming Heaven it really affected him. He really enjoyed what I was doing with it. And it was something he really wanted to work with me and do something like that for America. It seems to really... It's almost as if like he had been starved of something which was up his alley, as it were, from comics for a while, and I'd shown him something which hadn't existed. Entirely true, possible, because I was using a lot of computer trickery in the artwork at that point in time, and no one else was doing that at that time. But that was basically the moment where I became one of the chosen ones. I spent the rest of the party chatting with Grant about the shape of the universe and the effects of art on reality, whilst editors tried to kind of get in between us and talk to him about money, but that didn't work. I have to say, it wasn't just Grant Morrison that was affected by that. I had another experience that same year when I was showing my work to some artists on the floor, and one guy called Rodney Ramos, apparently he ran from one side of the hall to the next because he heard I was at a booth, because he wanted to tell me how great I was. And I was like, I'm really flattered. He goes, "Man, I can't believe like your work is so amazing." And then I mentioned how old I was, which I think was maybe 32 at the time. 2004, 32, yeah. And he went, oh, I thought you were 19. Oh, you're not so hot now. Which was nice, because I did look quite young back then. But I realised then it's like cosmic superheroes were what America needed. And I had done it in 2000 AD. If only we'd made it a longer series. But maybe we could redo it. I don't know. I'm going to put that out there into the universe. Anyway, Grant, I think, as every job we've done, he's been looking for me to kind of recreate that kind of cosmic magic. And that's what I've done, basically. Every time I worked with him, I thought, I know what he liked. I know he liked the madness of that. And I guess that's probably shaped my career, actually. Me trying to kind of, one-up myself on Storming Heaven. Until we redo it. Or maybe we'll do a sequel. Yeah. Let's do a sequel and a prequel. Let's sell it to Hollywood. Let's get people cosplaying as Dr. Trips, man. I would love to see people cosplaying as Dr. Trips. Next time you're at a convention, if you're listening to this, come as Dr. Trips. Please, paint yourself. Wear the bright pink hair. And then come and say hello.
So it's the final day of New York Comic Con, and I'm joined by a competitor, by Image Comics, is David Brothers. Welcome to the Thrillcast, David.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited for this.
It's an absolute privilege. I've been wanting to get you on for a while because although we both work in the kind of same sector for different companies, we share a mutual love of 2000 AD. First off, let's talk about what you do for Image, who are, all guns blazing at the moment. You're brand manager, is that correct?
Branding manager. But so I handle panel programming at conventions. Like, I'm the guy moderating the conversations and kind of making sure all the creators are taken care of. I work on the website doing like interviews and content of that sort, writing bios for creators that don't have them, asking creators for bios and hoping they send them to me. We have a podcast called The I Word, which is very similar to this, where I just speak one-on-one with one of our creators about their work, kind of how they got into comics, what they're influenced by, and then also like their hobbies. So we'll talk about like Final Fantasy or stage combat or something to that extent. And then whatever people ask me to do. At cons I sell books, even though like I'm not really a retail guy, but it's just like a jack of all trades sort of situation.
Because you were a comics journalist for a long time. I mean, I presume that's one of the reasons why Image kind of pounced on you to use those skills.
Yeah, I'd shown through my work writing about comics I have my own site, Fourth Letter, that I founded with Gavin Jasper, who's a longtime friend of mine. And then I worked for Comics Alliance, I wrote for The Atlantic, Playboy, Publishers Weekly, and even Marvel.com at one point. And I think it sounds like I'm tooting my own horn, but I showed that I had a good attention to detail. I would notice things in comics and explain them in a way that they found interesting. Like, if I get you in a room and I know like 3 or 4 things you like, I can introduce you to a new comic. Like, I can sell that to you. And so I was brought on originally as a proofreader to do like deep reading and go like, oh, this guy cannot use commas at all. Please like sort his thing out. And that just kind of evolved. Like, once I showed I could do like panels, my role expanded to that realm. Once I showed I could write, or was still interested in writing, then we came out with Image Plus, the magazine that we publish like once a month. And it's just kind of like that kind of thing. I'm flexible, and I've got my grandfather's work ethic, which is that a job is not done until it's done. So I'll sit and I'll get it done, and it'll be done well.
I'm much more of a done is better than perfect kind of guy, personally. But they're going to crucify me for that. But let's talk about 2000 AD, because like I said, it's something that we share a mutual passion on. How did you come to be introduced to it?
It was the first Judge Dredd movie, actually, the Stallone. That was kind of I knew of Judge Dredd, like I'd seen references to him in various comics and letters columns, but I'd never there's not a lot of 2000 AD in small town Georgia, where I grew up, So like, I liked the movie as a kid. I haven't seen it since, but when I moved to San Francisco, I was hooked up with several issues of the magazine, and also the magazine to a lesser extent. And they were just the kind of stories that I wanted to read. Like, I grew up on superheroes, like Jim Lee X-Men, Todd McFarlane Spider-Man, which is kind of ironic that I'm working at Image with those influences. But the 2000 AD had a point of view that I wasn't getting in American comics, which was the heroes weren't perfect. Like, you wouldn't want to hang out with Judge Dredd the way you would, say, Peter Parker. Like, the conversations would be entirely different. And even just kind of the universe, like the Judge Dredd, like, context, like everything around it, the tone of the books, the point of view of the characters, and even like the way the bureaucracy works was something I hadn't seen before. And really, like, I'm a crime novel reader, like that's kind of my thing. And a lot of that speaks very well to kind of corruption, or even just like getting yours at the expense of someone else. And there's a lot of that in 2000 AD that I really liked.
It's a question that is perennially asked, and there's no straightforward answer to it about why 2000 AD and Judge Dredd remain not unknown, but relatively unread over here. Do you think there's, to a certain extent, it's the nuance of the characters? So I was thinking the other day about martial law, which of course Pat Mills and Kev O'Neill. And that is so extremely dystopian and so very much in your face, and completely tearing down the very concepts of superheroes. And it's popular over here because it's so blatant, it's so straightforward. Do you think sometimes the nuance and the subtlety of 2000 AD can bypass people?
Oh, 100%. Even if you look at something like Warren Ellis and Brian Hitch on The Authority, Ellis says, he jokes like, no, the Authority were villains. They were just up against worse people. And Judge Dredd is sort of similar to where, like, he's cracking skulls like the law is the law. And there's some nuance that I really appreciate, but there's not the kind of, like, he's not a compassionate character all the time. And sometimes it's hard for people to see that. They just see him as a guy, oh, like, he's just a tough cop. Like, we've seen Dirty Harry before. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. What I like about the most recent stuff, for instance, is that, like, since the series has been in more or less real time, like, he's an old man who has kind of been ground down by his work and by the things that he has to do. While if you look at, you know, like, superheroes are dominant here for a variety of reasons too far to go into. Spider-Man is still Spider-Man, you know, and he's been divorced, like, he's had loved ones die, and it's just, you would think he wouldn't quite be so happy-go-lucky. While with Dredd, you can really see, like, the effects of the stories that he's had. So there's, like, gravity that you kind of have to pay attention to get.
Let's talk beyond Dredd, because I mean, we've had conversations in the past about the variety of what we do. Some of the highlights of 2000 AD for you?
I love Lowlife. Like, again, getting back to, like, the crime thing. There was the I think Andy Diggle did a story that I liked a lot. Dirty Frank I like a lot. That sort of street level Mega City 1. I love all that stuff. And actually, Frank Quitely and I think Robbie Morrison did Shimura. Those are devastatingly good. Like, it's, for me, it's a mix of, like, compelling crime storytelling and also, like, the visuals. I grew up on very clean, you know, like, John Romita Sr., John Romita Jr. type stuff. So seeing, like, Carlos Esquerra is, like, with his, like, grimy, lumpy, like, realistic-looking humans is really exciting.
Have you seen the Future Shock documentary?
Not yet. I have it on my list.
One of the things that they have is Karen Berger on there talking about the DC's efforts to borrow 2000 AD creators and to bring them over to the States, and you have the birth of Vertigo and whatnot. Now, you know, yesterday we were talking about how in many ways without Vertigo there'd be no Image as it is now, because when it launched in the 90s it was a very different animal. Let's talk a little bit about what you think the influence of 2000 AD is on something like modern Image comic.
Yeah, so I can take it. I've got a timeline, I think, if I can freestyle this properly. So, like, Image Comics is trying to do comics that reflect now, like, whether it's the point of view or the demographics or, like, any aspect of the now. Like, that's what we're trying to publish. And Vertigo was very much publishing comics of its time as well. That's why there was, if you look at Transmetropolitan, like, an extreme distrust of authority in the years when, like, Bush was coming to power. Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon on Hellblazer is kind of like, how do you be a good friend? In addition to, like, all the magic stuff, it's very much a series about friendship and kind of not being selfish. And 2000 AD is very good at capturing that same feeling, where Judge Dredd, again, he's been ground down by his work, and we're having conversations in the US now about, like, the proper ways to police. Like, have we had the right approach all along, or have we kind of created a monster that we have to kind of sand down? And I think that's the power of those stories, is that they always reflect the times that they're from, and a lot of those times have things that we're still struggling with now. Even, like, you know, something crazy like when Judge Dredd pushed the button and nuked the city. In the 80s, like, that was a terrifying idea. Like, the idea of the Cold War and nuclear annihilation was very much resonant and real. And now our annihilation fears are different, but they're still present. And that's part of the fun of reading 2000 AD in the magazine, is seeing those fears kind of play out, but then also get resolved in interesting ways that you wouldn't expect. And that's what I think American comics could kind of do more of, like, borrow a little bit from you guys. Because I look at a story like Day of Chaos, which was extreme in its scope and its effect, like the reverberations are still being felt, or even Trifecta, that crossover that came just after Day of Chaos, which I loved, which was nothing like any crossover I've read in American comics. It was organic, it was smooth, and it was worthwhile. And I know that's the influence that I keep, like, every time someone comes over, like Hev Walker did, he worked on Thunderbolts with Jeff Parker for a while. Steve Dillon, Garth Ennis, of course, Alan Moore, they always bring that flavor to American comics, and that's part of why they become stars, because their voice is different from the voice of a Jerry Conway or David Michelini. Like, not knocking those guys, they're very good at what they do, but they have, you know, an American point of view, and bringing in the outside point of view, whether British, Irish, or whatever, and I don't want to say baggage, like that's such a loaded term, but like the context you bring with you being from a certain place, you know, like I have Southern baggage, that's what makes comics go. Like that's what makes comics of today, you know, and I think that's why the people who love 2000 AD really like it, because they know they have this thing that not a lot of people over here know about yet, but they're all diehard fans.
It's interesting to look at Image as it is now, and see the massive breadth and depth of the things that you publish. And I've kind of come to think of Image as being an anthology publisher. Not that you publish anthology, because you have Ireland and things like that, but you know, you're open to all sorts of storytelling, all sorts of stories. And that is something that strikes me as an influence of 2000 AD. That when you actually, when people may say, you know, I just want superheroes. Actually, when you provide them with good quality, varied stories, they lap it up.
And it's true. I kind of joke that Image's brand is that we don't have a brand. It's just the comics. Like that's all you need. If you like romance, if you like horror, if you like whatever, like we've got that for you. And that's a strength, because like Random House doesn't have a brand. They're not like the romance novel publisher. Like, no, they make books, and you like books, so you come and see what kind of books you want to pick up. And we even have books, I feel like East of West from Jonathan Hickman and Nick Dragata. It could easily run in 2000 AD. Just, not even just the dystopia, like the art style, the approach. It's such like a ruthless comic, you know, that it fits that kind of mold without being like just a straight ripoff. And yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, you did. No, absolutely. And it's the fact that people look at Image and they see that variety. They see people taking risks, and again, that has always struck me as a 2000 AD ethos. That, you know, it might not work as well as we want it to on a particular strip, but at least we're pushing the envelope. We're trying new things. I mean, you've already mentioned one example there with East of West. Are there creators that you look at and you go, you've got that voice, you've developed that again, a word I hesitate to use, Britishness in the way you approach it.
Weirdly, it's probably the least British comic we published, but Southern Bastards from Jason Aaron, Jason Latour. It's very much, so on the surface, it's about like tough dudes in the South fighting other tough dudes in the South in football, but it's also about toxic masculinity. It's about corruption. The head of the crime mob in this small town is also like the high school football coach, so he runs the city with an iron fist. And I feel like that's like super Mega City 1 in tone, you know. It could be Mama or someone like that. Those guys for sure. Who else? Wictive is clean, like Nikolai Dante is clean, or maybe some of Disraeli's strips. Like they have that very like fashionable, cool style that you know will break your heart like 4 or 5 pages down the line. Those guys. I guess that's cheating because Kieron and Jamie are from the UK.
Well, it's something that they've both said about the influence of discovering things like Nemesis the Warlock at a ridiculously young age, and it warping their tiny little minds. It's one of those things where it may be a latent influence, but it always seems to be there. For me, 2000 AD has always been about taking a concept. In fact, Rob Williams has said this to me. For 2000 AD, you take a concept, you take an idea, and you push it until it almost breaks, and then you rein it in a little bit. Yeah. And that's where 2000 AD sits.
And I would kill for like a Rogue Trooper or Nikolai Dante style strip from us. Just like, again, like the scope and pushing it until it breaks. I keep coming back to Dredd because I love that he's such an old man now, you know? Because, I mean, Spider-Man was my guy, Gambit, the X-Men, they're going to be like between 28 and 31 years old their entire career. But when you take an idea and you say, okay, this is what this guy does, what happens if that's all he's done for the past 20 years? Like, how does that make him feel? How does that affect his relationships? Like, does he have friends? Does he go drinking? That's one of those things. Between 2000 AD, Euro comics more generally, like the French books from Soleil and so forth, and Japanese manga, there are all these unspoken influences in American comics. Like, there was a super popular manga called Rurouni Kenshin in the 90s. Also, Samurai X was another name for it. And the creator was a huge Jim Lee fan. So he would take like X-Men designs and turn them into samurai and make them characters. There were several characters in the book that looked just like Gambit, you know? And that's like we trade. Like comics are a very simple but powerful art form. So you can look at it and it's powerful. You look at Dredd and you see like a certain thing. You look at Nikolai Dante and you get it. And the same for manga. And so since so much of comics is a visual medium, so as you're looking at these different things, like looking for the next great thing and what you can synthesize into your own work, you're always going to be on the lookout for something like 2000 AD because it's always being switched up. Like despite, how many strips, you just passed 2000, that was last week? Yeah. That's an insane amount of comics. And 2000 AD number 2000 is probably nothing like 2000 AD 1000 or 500 or 200 or number 1. And so the variety and the diversity of content and also just like the breadth of content is extremely powerful to me.
Obviously there's a lot of British writers and artists who are working for Image now. Do you think their influence on the way Image works and you know, brand but not brand itself, do you think they've had an effect just like they had an effect on Vertigo and DC and Marvel when the British invasions came in?
Yeah, 100%. If you look at Injection from Warren Ellis, Declan Shalvey, and Jordi Belair, I think has Declan done stuff for you guys? Oh man, that would be amazing. But that book is sort of, we joked that it was Die Hard meets X-Files on a panel, but it's much more compact than that. That's a book that I feel like you can see the influence, and people look at Warren Ellis and Declan as well as icons. Like they make the books other people want to make. So just having that book alone changes like the kinds of pitches we get. The same thing for like Wicked and the Divine or Southern Bastards or East of West. Like people see that we'll do that and then they'll try to do the same thing, which is fine. Like that's cool, but we want to see like what's the next step past that. So, like you were saying, push it to the wall and see what happens.
The issue of storytelling and story pace is an interesting one because obviously 2000 AD has always been known for its compressed storytelling. And it's often a criticism that's leveled at American comics of decompression and the idea that is a negative thing, and it can be.
Yeah.
But also, what I think 2000 AD has done over the years, and this may or may not, it would be interesting to get your perspective on it, may or may not be an influence on Image's stuff, is that you can kind of press the accelerator but also take your foot off it. So when the story needs to be hyper compressed, it can be, but when it needs some space to breathe, it can do that as well. And I mean, do you think that helps keep things fresh and interesting?
Yeah, definitely. Compression and decompression are both like they're tools in a toolbox. Decompression for me in American comics came from Frank Miller's Ronin and Daredevil, where he got a hold of Lone Wolf and Cub and was like, oh, I want to try like stretching things out, giving them room to breathe. But then you look at something hyper dense like the work that Frank Whiteley tends to do with Grant Morrison, where it's like there's no room to breathe. Like you are in it and you're going to be in it until it's done. Like those are all like two sides of a really nice coin. Like Southern Bastards, for example, the first arc sets up the series to go in a certain direction. The second arc is almost all side stories. It's establishing the world. They took the foot off the accelerator for a moment. So then at the end of the third arc, when they get back to the main story, you're like, oh, this is going to be like Armageddon. You know, that's totally a 2000 AD thing. I'm still amazed that like the 8-page chunks work so well because we're so used to over here like 20-page comics now.
It's getting shorter.
Yeah, it's getting shorter and shorter. Pretty soon we'll be down to 8 as well. But they work so well as short stories and also as once they're collected in a trade. Like 2000 AD trades take longer for me to read than any other company. And like length is obviously not like an indicator of quality, but they're dense, like they're like a meal unto themselves. Where normally I'd sit, and read outside for like an hour and tear through 3 or 4 books. Like I'll take my time with these stories because I know there's so much going on and so much to pay attention to.
Oh, you've mentioned Low Life as a series you enjoy. Yeah. Is there anything at the moment which is really kind of standing out to you as something that you're getting your teeth into?
Yeah, it's funny. It's not technically at the moment, but I bought it from you at the last con, so it's new for me. I'd never read Halo Jones, which is obviously not from 2016. But it's new to me, and there are tricks in there that I'd never seen before. And just the way the story I think when I was a quarter of the way through the book, I had no idea where it was going to go. I just knew that like eventually she leaves the planet and has adventures, and it's like a character unto herself. And it's just a story about her life. Like she's hanging out with her friends, she's trying to escape like the flood and like rats and all this stuff. And that's part of the fun of 2000 AD being relatively new to it, is that I can go back to like Ennis Dillon, Dredd, or Halo Jones, or even just like the Future Shocks collections and get like a dose from a span of time. And it all feels new and fresh and like modern, you know, it never feels dated.
And now at the 2000 AD booth, I'm joined by a man I regularly describe as a Dredd scholar, Mr. Douglas Wolk. How are you, Douglas?
Doing pretty great. Pretty great. It's a lovely show. I'm enjoying this year's New York Comic Con an awful lot. It's huge. It's how many people are there? Like 140,000, 180,000, something like that. It's enormous. I have absolutely no idea. And the fascinating thing is I went to a panel a couple days ago where they were talking about the demographics of the show. And apparently something like 6% of the people at this show are here primarily for comics. But there's a lot of overlap of communities. And, you know, I'm sitting in the 2000 AD booth right now, and almost all the books are gone. People keep coming up and buying them, and it's kind of lovely to see.
Well, that's the thing. I think there's been a lot of chatter about that statistic, and I think, yeah, it may well be true, but if you're not primarily here for comics, it may be a secondary or tertiary consideration. So I think it's. I worry about the way people are talking about that revelation, because I think that gives credence to fears that you know these Comic-Cons are nothing to do with comics, and I think it probably discourages people as well.
The thing is, even with all that, given the number of people who are here primarily for comics and the number of people who are here primarily for something else but are very interested in comics as well, or are curious about stuff, like even if you were to strip everything that has nothing to do with comics away from this show, it would still be a enormous comic show. It would still be one of the biggest comic shows I've ever seen. It's just that it is 5 overlapping shows happening in the same place, and one of them is a gigantic comic show.
So let's talk Dredd, because it's this thing that probably our audience know you best for. You did the Dredd Reckoning blog for a long time, making your way through to our releases. But you also wrote Mega City 2, City of Courts for IDW. Let's go back to the beginning. Why Dredd? How did you get into Dredd?
I got into Dredd a little bit by accident. When I was maybe 11 or 12 years old, there was an American company called Mile High Comics that did mail order, and they had a deal where if you sent them, I think, $2, $5, something like that, they would send you 10 British comic books. And so they sent me a stack that had, you know, a bunch of issues of Mighty World of Marvel and some, you know, Avengers reprints and stuff. And then there were 3 very early issues of 2000 AD. I believe all 3 were Brian Bolland issues. A nice way to start. And a year or so later, I was over in England with my family, and we went to London. I went to Forbidden Planet, and I bought the 12 issues that they had out on their rack, and those just happened to be, I think, 12 of the first 15 parts of the Apocalypse War, and, you know, from then on I was hooked.
And why did you decide to do Dredd Reckoning? Because it's number one, it's such a massive undertaking to go through all of the graphic novels that are available. Number 2, to talk about them in such depth and your reaction to them, and to bring other people in and get their reaction on it. What was the overriding idea behind that blog?
So there were 2 ideas behind the blog. One of them is I do an awful lot of professional writing for all sorts of places. I like to have one project going on at any given time that is just for me and is just for fun. And I had managed to drift away from Dredd, as people do, for 2 years, 3 years, something like that. And then suddenly the complete case files started coming out, and I thought, oh, I'll pick these up and see if they're as good as I remember. And of course, they were vastly better than I remembered. And started getting really into it and thought, you know, there's a lot of books but there's a finite number of books. And if I were to write about one book every week, that would be the kind of five-finger exercise I'd like. I could talk about them with other people, see other people's perspectives on them. It could, that could be a nice writing project that would have a definite end. And then it just kind of spiraled out of control and became the thing I looked forward to doing most every week. And went on for about a year and a half, something like that. And that led directly to IDW asking me if I would write some text features for them, which led to writing Mega City 2.
And what are your feelings about where Dredd is at the moment? Because obviously it's an endless topic of debate about the shift in him as a character, a shift in the nature of the strip. What's your feelings on the kind of post-Day of Chaos age of Dredd?
I love it. I read it every week as soon as I get the chance to. Watching the thing, as obviously one of the things that's unique and amazing about Dredd as a strip is that it happens in real time. So we're seeing this character aging and changing in real time. We're seeing the city being completely transformed very slowly over time. And as somebody who's been reading this since 1982, this has been the fictional world that I'm in for a little bit every week that's changing at the same pace as the world that I actually live in. And I love that. I love the stories that have been going on for the last couple of years. I'm really, really excited to see where it goes in the new post-PJ Maybe era.
So, having chatted with Alex de Campi about forthcoming movie Dredd, we have a collaborator and writer on for a couple of years now on the movie Dredd series, Arthur Wyatt. Welcome back to the Philcast, Arthur.
Hi.
So we've had you on before to talk about the movie Dredd series. Keeping things fairly vague as you and Alex working on the new story. What's your intentions for the direction you're going to take the series in?
So we sort of batted back and forth on a couple of ideas. One of which is sort of a fairly long one, which we're probably doing after the current one, which is sort of a sort of short, sharp story, bringing back one of the characters from the movie, which is actually something that hasn't really happened with the movie Dredd comics so much so far. So that's kind of an interesting moment that we're doing that, and it's going to be a bit of a slow burn and a ramp up as well. I can say that about it. I am partway through my first pass on part one, and Alex is looking at that at the moment. Part one kind of leads you into the story, and then things are going to get very sticky very quickly with the following episodes.
What's the challenge for you as somebody who's always written on their own in starting a collaboration? Because Alex was saying that she's used to collaboration, that's normally how she works, but it's not for you. What are the challenges of that?
I think comics are inherently a collaborative art form. I've actually been sort of working a lot with Jake Lynch lately, and we have on a couple of projects bounced ideas back and forth. The recent Harry Heston story was initially his idea, and we kind of talked about ways we could approach that when we were pitching that. With that, of course, I'm writing a straight script all by myself, and sending that off, and then he's doing art, and he kind of adds a lot of elements in the art, and then it comes back to me. So the delineation is actually quite sharp. With actually writing a script together, that's a little more tricky. In terms of like flat out technical detail, we're basically just collaborating on a Word doc and bouncing it back and forth. There may be better ways of doing that now. Like I'm sure there are people who are sort of very advanced with how they're sort of doing collaborations with Google Docs and so on. But we're just keeping it simple, really.
You mentioned the Harry Heston story that you worked on with Jake Lynch. We had Jake on the podcast the other week to talk about it and to talk about the genesis of the character. What was it like for you working on a character that was so beloved by Stuart, Perkins, and Jake?
Well, I mean, it was a pretty great opportunity. I didn't actually know before that. For some reason, it never occurred to me that Jake had worked on Class of '79 and that Heston was his character. So when he raised it, and this is before Stuart passed away, I was like, yeah, let's do that. And we had a couple of goes at finding an approach that worked, and I think we really did in the end, because it's a little... You can't fit him into the Dredd world quite the way he is in the comics. We had to change him a little, but I think it keeps his essence there. So when we'd sort of found that process that worked, we actually, Jake was showing Stuart like pages as he was doing them, and apparently Stuart was really into it and really happy. We actually pretty much finished the whole thing before we heard the news, and that was obviously devastating. And I think both of us were sort of straight away, this is now like dedicated to Stuart Perkins. So that was a kind of an odd thing where it went from a sort of celebration of sort of British 2008 based small press stuff to also being kind of a memorial episode. Obviously, like huge part of fandom. I came into 2000 AD. Well, came back into 2000 AD via the news groups and the message board and the whole small press community, and he was like a linchpin of that. Class of '79, when I was doing small press stuff, that was what we wanted to do. Future Quake, like, we aspired to the kind of quality and impact that the Class of '79 had, and yeah, that he's gone now is kind of a shocker.
Moving on to happier subjects. In terms of what's coming up for you in the future, I mean, obviously you're working on more movie Dredd, but are there any series ideas that are kind of percolating away, things that you'd like to do in the future?
I've been talking to Jake about a couple of ideas. Something might come out of that. One thing we seem to both kind of want to do is something with big robots in, so always a favorite, so keep an eye out for that in future. I actually have a couple of Dredds in the pipeline right now, one with Dredd, one I don't know who the artist on that is going to be, but those are some pretty fun stories. It's actually kind of fun breaking out into sort of different modes of doing Dredd after doing the movie Dredd, because of course you can really step on the other aspects of Dredd and sort of take it in the sort of wacky directions, or sort of like, you know, if you want to have insane citizens doing strange stuff, you can really sort of push that out much further with sort of the mainline Dredd. So yeah, it's nice doing that as a balance to the movie Dredd, which is sort of always super grounded, super gritty. The thing that I'm doing at the moment with Alex is basically sort of a noir-y cyberpunk heist drama. So that's, you know, pretty different from the sort of thing I'm doing in regular Dredd.
So I am in Artist Alley. I'm joined by the British equivalent of the Backroom Boys, Backstreet Boys, Mr. Kieron Gillen.
Hello.
Mr. Jamie McKelvie.
I think we're more like the Pet Shop Boys.
Just a pet shop.
Yeah.
So guys, are you having fun?
Yes. We have very minimal commitments, so yes.
We're at the con basically, and we only decided to come like. I decided like a week ago, Jamie decided like 3 days ago. Like the con was already started by the time Jamie got on a plane. Yeah. So we got nothing to do, and we're doing a lot of it. Yeah. I had 4 things I managed to cram into my schedule. Like I got a couple of signings and I jumped on a couple of panels just because I felt bad, and I missed one of my panels. Missed one of my signings. That's how bad I've been.
highly unprofessional from you both. It's disgraceful. Yeah. The reason I wanted to chat to you was because we had Prog 2000 the other day, and I saw both of you sort of tweet about it and say what an influence 2000 AD was. Just let's talk about that, because I mean you're doing very, very well with The Wicked and the Divine. Many people will know Phonogram. Some more than one. There you go. More than one is many. And just really wanted to get an idea of its influence on you guys, and exactly how you feel it has shaped the way that you make comics now.
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, I've told this story before, but my big brother and me used to share a room when I was a kid, so he bought 2000 AD, so I was reading it way too young. Like 6 when I was reading Zenith and Nemesis the Warlock, and so that obviously warped my brain. From then on, like, I was just a massive fan. Like, Halo Jones is a massive. You can trace a lot of our stuff back to that kind of 2000 AD story, I think. And then he moved away. He moved out, so I stopped reading it. But then I started again in like I can't remember what year it was, but it was when Chris Weston was doing the. No, I'm blanking on the name. The horrifying.
Indigo Prime Killing Time. Yeah.
Many nightmares. Many nightmares. I mean, it's incredible looking back at it, but like that's scared the. Yeah, that was a bad time for me reading that comic. But yeah, like my formative influences are 2000 AD and the Transformers comic at the same time.
Ditto, absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know about Kieron, but.
You weren't here for the question because you were too busy talking to She-Hulk.
Yeah, She-Hulk wanted to know where Margaret Bennett was. We're standing in Margaret Bennett's booth.
None of us look like Margaret Bennett, to be
true. None of us are blonde and talented. I mean, 2008, it's like, I came to it, I wouldn't say late, but I came to it relatively late. Like, my brother was buying it when I was a teenager. Like, I got bits before, but and so I kind of retroactively got into a lot of the 80s and like very late 70s stuff via like the reprints, the monthly Best of 2000 AD and Best of Judge Dredd kind of stuff. But my enormous ABC Warriors obsession, I mean, like ABC Warriors Black Hole and the second Bad Company, the Wilderness one. They're my two major influences in terms of like writing team books at Marvel, because the wonderful thing that Mills does is 5-6 page chunks. We've got a big cast of 7 people, each with very strong personalities. How the hell? And every issue he introduces them all.
Yeah.
And the main device he uses always does a single standalone story focused on one. But the main device he uses, essentially, you make each one a narrator and cycle it around the team, so you get his commentary on everyone else, and he gets wonderful ironic juxtapositions. You get how weird it is. And there's so much in Bad Company as well like that. So that is always there. Yeah. And an aesthetic, historically important and all that, And I did a big Wolverine Origins I did at Marvel. The entire first issue is my Shaco tribute. It's where Logan fights a polar bear for an issue. Yeah. And I actually bought a copy of Shaco and sent it over to actually get some inspiration.
I remember when the Shaka collection came out, and I wasn't expecting that to be an influence on your work at all.
I'm a big fan of over-researched violent comics. It's a bear. The only bear on the CIA death list.
So I was just chatting to David Brothers earlier on for the podcast, and a lot of people kind of put the whole kind of British invasion thing down to the effect of it to an intrinsic Britishness. But when we were talking, I kind of got out of him what he thought 2000 AD's influence had been, and his point of view was very much kind of it's about character-driven good ideas. When you're doing series like The Wicked and the Divine. Kieron has just sprayed everybody with Diet Coke.
Apparently, naming our series is very funny.
It's just a joke to you, isn't it?
I thought you were about to say, have you ever considered doing a character-driven comic with good ideas?
No.
Serious question. No, what I was going to say is how near the surface are those influences that you've talked about when with something like Wicked and the Divine?
Let Kieron answer this one because he's got his thinking face.
It's tricky. It's certainly in the mix. I mean, Wick Div is explicitly a homage to everything we've ever loved. I mean, like, Jamie mentions the Transformers. There's a bit where like all the Valkyries transform into an enormous giant Valkyrie, and that's clearly that's us doing the Constructicons. You know what I mean? So there's definitely 2000 AD in there. And I think a lot about I often analyse American 90s comics. There's still a kind of hangover of how much people hated, at least the people who are now writing comics, hated comics in the 90s. The kind of the big guns and boobs everywhere kind of vibe. And like, you know, and still the kind of old characters with guns are ultimately kind of frowned upon. And in Britain we're not like that, because basically 2000 AD, because basically 2000 AD had a lot of firearms-driven books, but normally done with either tongue-in-cheek, and also, of course, Britain, of course, the idea of a gun is a fantasy element. You know, a gun is not much different than like laser beams out your eyes as far as we're concerned, because we just don't have them. So I've gone off on a ramble there. No. Which I find quite interesting in terms of like there's a theme through my work where I give all my characters, pulls out a minigun at some point in the story, and I've used miniguns as metaphors. I've used miniguns just as an FBR moment. But I think that comes in 2000 AD. The moment it's the Hammerstein standing on a mound of bodies, gun in the air, big caption, the of hyperbolic paradistical. I'll go with that. Machismo. There's certainly that, and then kind of like the idea that the juxtaposition of the two at once is very interesting to me. As in the idea, this is clearly very silly, but it's also very important, and it hits something like down there. But you know, it's very hard to burrow down 2000 AD, just because it's so big and so wide. You can get the kind of the punk rock and the disrespectful attitude, and the kind of, you know, Warren Ellis always puts it like, you know, I bought Torquemada. I bought the first Nemesis collections for Matt Fraction, and I said it's like if you need to understand why Warren turned out like Warren, this is what he was reading as like 11-year-olds. This is what a children's book is within the UK, and that's the thing, you know. And in America, children's books aren't like that.
No, not at all. Jamie, in terms of your art style, I mean, you mentioned Transformers. There, and there was a lot of crossover between the artists on that and 2000 AD. Did you see the influences near the surface in what you do? I mean, certainly for me, the biggest 2000 AD influence for me would be Steve Yao on Zenith. Like I think that's a pretty clear one. Do you know, I was reading Transformers too young to really realise who was making it, or even that there were people that were making it. But certainly, like. Steve Yao was my main one. A lot of the Dredd artists. I'm now in that that trance of Sunday afternoon where I can't remember names and things like that. But yeah, certainly. And the other thing as well with reading it as kids compared to reading the American stuff, there's no limitation on what kind of story we can. You know, we grew up with like, oh, there's all these different kinds of story in comics. If you read the mainstream American stuff, it's like superheroes are the main thing. So there was never that limitation for us, I think. Well, it's something I was talking to do with David about how Image has always struck me now as an anthology publisher. In the anything goes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like this is the form that Eric Stevenson wanted Image to take. You know, he's been working on it for the last decade or so, and he's really, it's brilliant. It's like any type of story goes, as long as it's good.
I mean, sometimes not even then.
I mean, he publishes us after all, so.
No comment. So, I mean, have you guys sort of been keeping up with the more modern stuff, or is it very much a kind of?
I've dropped out the tooth in the last couple of years. Right. As in, like, there's some stuff I've picked up, but I haven't been regular for a while, which is a shame because I would like to be. I haven't even picked up. I want to pick up the 2000. I haven't even picked up the Prog 2000 yet either, which is like that. I desperately want to grab because it looks utterly amazing. You know, from what you pulled together, you guys should be enormously proud.
I haven't kept up with any comics for the last 2 years. I've got a stack of stuff to read, and I keep buying stuff and not reading it because I'm too busy drawing comics.
You're a fool to yourself.
It's terrible. So. One day. I had jury duty this week, and I could finally catch up with like 3 comics. But no,
It was interesting what you said, Kieron, about introducing Matt Fraction to Nemesis Warlock. What was his reaction?
No, he's berserk. You know, just think he got the absolute berserk and joy of it all, which is like, that's the thing. Early Kevin O'Neill is a hell of a drug, and it's like I often say, it's like people ask me at Marvel, so what artist would you like in this this book? It's like, I would like Kevin O'Neill circa 1982. It's like, if you can find a way to arrange that. It's like the weird energy of like that early, like the early Torquemada stuff and the berserk and the strain. The fact that the first two are about pop songs. They're basically like phonogram rap. They're like phonogram B-side in that kind of way of, this is an exploration of or song with the jam or whatever.
Yeah.
Madness.
Yeah. But wait, there's more. Don't forget that 2000 AD is published every Wednesday and is available in newsagents and comic book stores in the UK and around the world. It's also available digitally from 2000 AD's webshop and apps. We have apps for Apple devices, Android devices, and Windows 10 devices. And if you buy any of our products on one of the apps, you can download it DRM free. So no copyright protection on there to stop you reading it on other devices. Direct from the webshop when you use the same login. You can also go to the webshop and apps and get our latest collections. If you subscribe to the print edition of 2000 AD, then not only do you get it several days earlier through your letterbox, but you will beat the price rise. So make sure that you grab a subscription ASAP before the post-Prog 2000 price rise comes in. Also, if you go to our apps and subscribe to 2000 AD and or the Judge Dredd magazine, then you get access to a range of back issues plus a load of free comics. So make sure you go along to www.2000adonline.com and either click through to the shop and the subscriptions page or click on the relevant button for the apps. Also, be sure to keep up with 2000 AD on our other social media. We are on Twitter as @2000AD. We are on Facebook. Just type in facebook.com/2000AD. We also have our YouTube channel where you can check out the latest Thrillcast, but also the 2000 AD ABC, the alphabetical journey through the galaxy's greatest comic, which goes out every week. And that is www.youtube.com/2000AD online. We're also on Instagram as Insta2000AD, and on all of these platforms you get not only the latest 2000 AD news, but also competitions, lots of fun stuff from the archives and what's coming up. If you definitely want to keep up to date on what's happening with 2000 AD, make sure you sign up to the Thrill Mail, which goes out every Wednesday. If you go to www.2000adonline.com/thrillmail, that's all in word, thrillmail, THRILLMAIL, and put your details in there, then you'll get a weekly Thrillgasm into your inbox from the 2000 AD command module. That's all for this week. Splundig ver thrig, Earthlets.